Hey everyone, welcome. This is a very unplanned live stream. I'm usually just waking up, but I've been up for an hour. I couldn't sleep, which I don't know. I don't know whether that was because of what's just happened. But it has just been revealed that Ivan Milat, who is Australia's most prolific serial killer that we know, has just died. So we're going to discuss this and look into it. How is everyone doing? Is the music okay? Is it too loud? Let me know. I'm just quickly sharing this out. If you could share it out too, because this is breaking news. I can't see chat just for a second whilst I share this out. I have a feeling everyone's going to be starting to message me soon. Oh my god, did you hear the news? Yes, I did hear the news. And I'll explain why this news is big soon. Australia's most prolific serial killer has died. Why can't I share it to a group? Interesting. Okay. So sorry guys, this is also last minute. Hey Tammy, how are you? Oh, now I can hear. Okay, almost done. Sorry guys. Place. Okay, now I'm done and I can focus. All right, how is everyone? Okay, so let's get started and let's look into this because I came on as soon as I could. So, for those who haven't seen, I actually did do a video on Ivan Milat only a few weeks ago because I knew this was coming. He did have cancer. He had esophageal cancer and stomach cancer. So I figured it would be a good time to do the video and then share the news when he did pass. It was expected. It was expected to happen weeks ago, to be perfectly honest with you. So, hey Cheryl, no loss to me. He is Australia's most prolific serial killer. So if you want, I'm going to leave the video I did on him in the chat, and it's also in the description. So that you can watch and really understand what horrible crimes he committed. I mean, he would sever the spines of his victims so that they were incapacitated and couldn't fight back and couldn't escape. His crimes were horrific. So let's have a little read. Okay, so this is updated just moments ago. Ivan Milat, Australia's most notorious serial killer who was serving 7 life sentences for the murder of 7 backpackers, has died aged 74. Milat was diagnosed with terminal esophagus and stomach cancer in May. He had been transferred for advanced pain relief treatment to Sydney's Prince of Wales Hospital on October 11. He died in the medical wing of Long Bay this morning. Let me just fix my... hide that. Sorry guys, this is like so last minute. I wasn't prepared for this. Not expect this to happen this morning, but it's very interesting that I was awake for it. Okay. He had been transferred at the same hospital earlier this year after being moved from Goulburn Supermax jail, where he had been in solitary confinement. In a statement, the New South Wales Department of Corrective Services said Milat died at 4:07 a.m. today. His body will now be transferred to the coroner, who investigates all deaths in custody. Milat was arrested in 1994 following one of the biggest police investigations in Australian history, after 7 bodies were discovered in shallow graves in the Belangolo State Forest, southwest of Sydney, between 1992 and 1993. His victims were all hitchhikers travelling south along the Hume Highway near Liverpool in Western Sydney, who disappeared between 1989 and 1992. They were Deborah Everest and James Gibson, both 19, from Victoria, Simone Schmidl, 21, from Germany, Anna Habsfield, 20, and Gabert Neugenbauer, 21, a couple also from Germany, and Carolyn Clark, 21, and Joanne Walters, 22, from Britain. 2 of the victims... Hey everyone, hey Harmony, hey Jay Suarez. Yes, big news. 2 of the victims had been shot multiple times in the head as if used for target practice. 1 had been decapitated, and sadly that one that had been decapitated, unfortunately they never found her head, which is awful. 3 had stab wounds that would have caused them to be paralysed, and 2 of those victims had their spinal cords completely severed. Court documents state that all but 1 of the victims had been subjected to sexual interference either before or after death. Milat, who was convicted in 1996, never admitted to the murders. Now, I do actually have a photo of how Milat spent his last days. It was very interesting. This is the type of room he would have spent his last days in. Life of brutality. Ivan Robert Marko Milat was born on December 27th, 1994 in Guildford, Western Sydney, to a Croatian father, Stephen, and an Australian mother, Margaret. He was the 5th of 14 children, brought up in a brutally violent, financially strapped home. The Milat boys were keen hunters and gun enthusiasts and were frequently in trouble with police. By age 17, Milat had been sent to juvenile detention for 6 months on burglary charges, beginning an adulthood in and out of prison. Charges against him took a more sinister turn in 1971 when he was accused of abducting 2 18-year-old female hitchhikers. Nikki, I completely understand and I completely agree. You know, we're not, unfortunately, this is not a situation where we are sad that this person has passed. He brutalized, he terrorized these backpackers before they died. I mean, using people as target practice, decapitating them, severing their spinal columns so that they couldn't fight back. I mean, there is a reason he is known as Australia's most notorious serial killer. The questions I have now, though, hey 13th, is did he make a deathbed confession? Because all along he has said he is Ivan the innocent. He has said all along that somebody else did this. He's alluded that maybe someone in his family did this. He's written letters to a lot of people and made mention of that. But on the stand, he actually did stuff up, and he kind of acknowledged his involvement in the crimes. So you have to take what he says with a grain of salt. But in saying that, hey Jake, Oh, were you living in Sydney at the time? I was a little girl living close to Sydney at the time. So I just really want to know whether it will be revealed later that he's made a comment about it. I'm good. How are you? I don't think he would have confessed. He doesn't seem the type. But you never know. So interestingly, in 1990, he picked up a British backpacker or hitchhiker, Paul Onions, aged 24 at the time. And we love Paul Onions. He escaped Ivan Milat. Ivan introduced himself as Bill, and interestingly, Ivan has a brother named Bill. Mr. Paul Onions, managed to escape after Milat pulled a gun on him, and he was rescued by a passing car and taken to a police station. A woman and her sister and four of the children were actually in that car, and they saw what was going on, even though all these other cars passed by and wouldn't stop, and they actually stopped. They turned the car around to drop Paul Onions off at a police station, and they gave a recount, and they've been absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately at the time though, hey Gingerlocks, unfortunately at the time though, the police didn't follow up on that, and if they had of, I don't know how they would have, but if they had, maybe they would have been able to work out who the backpacker killer was a little earlier. After widespread appeal for information following the discovery of the bodies in the forest, Mr. Onions again contacted police and was flown back to Sydney. He's originally from the UK. In 1994, where he identified a photo of Milat, by then an interest to the police due to other tip-offs, as Bill. A few weeks after Mr. Onion's identification, police raided Milat's home to find multiple incriminating items, including clothing, camping equipment and other possessions belonging to the dead backpackers, and various weapons and ammunition. Now, if you remember, hey Cheryl, if you watched my Ivan Milat video, it's linked in the top of the description. I recommend watching it after this just to see how horrific this person is and how this is not a sad day. And I know that that's really weird to say, but you know, he did such horrific things. He gave family members items of clothing from these backpackers. He hid their items in the walls. He would concrete over the walls and hide things that the police found. They had 250 kilos, now let me work that out into pounds, worth of ammunition in the homes. So that's 551 pounds of ammunition were found at the home. Now that's at the time where guns were legal in Australia. Milat was found guilty in July 1996 of the murders of the 7 backpackers and of the abduction of Paul Onions. He was also linked to unsolved missing person cases, and I think this is why we really wanted him to talk, to let us know if he did actually kill these women, but I don't think we're going to get a deathbed confession. Harmony doesn't think so. Jay Suarez doesn't think so either. So he was linked to 3 women that were in the Newcastle region, which is close to me actually. Leanne Goodall, 20, Robin Hickey, 18, and Amanda Robinson, 14. And they disappeared in the late 1970s. And he was working on the roads at the time. He was a truck driver. So that's why they think that he has a lot more victims than we actually know of. He was actually married in the 1980s, and I covered this in the video. He was married to a 16-year-old who was pregnant with his cousin's baby at the time, but they ended up getting a divorce quickly soon after because of domestic violence. He has one daughter, Lanice, who actually lives near me, which is weird. And she is from an affair with Boris, his brother's wife. So the family is very interesting. It's very complex. Hey, Beth. Oh, wow. Beth says, my mother knew of this family. Mum lived close to the family home. My mum always believed it was one of the brothers were involved, as they were all mean and nasty family. I grew with these crimes. Yeah, so all of his brothers, well, no, I shouldn't say that. A lot of his brothers were in and out of jail. There is, when this was happening in the 1990s, police actually did a profile, and they actually thought that that there was two killers at the scenes of some of the crimes. There were like two mugs, like two cups, as if two people had drunk tea and been in the area, I believe. And the profile, there were several profiles, but one of the profiles said that it would be two males that were very close, they're like best friends or brothers. And so they really thought that was the case. But when they charged Milat, they didn't charge anyone else. So there is a possibility that someone else was there, because when you think about it, if there's two people there and one killer, so possibly there was someone else involved, one of his other brothers. Some people say it was his sister. So for the next couple of weeks, I think we're going to have a lot of things come out and speculations. And whilst I'm not a fan of speculation, really, I love facts. It's very, very interesting, because I would not be surprised if I believe that a lot of them know the truth in his family, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of the other brothers was involved. The prison's overpopulated in Australia. I don't think so. I think compared to American prisons, no. They actually have a nice time of it, I think. Do you know if any of the backpackers were runaways? No, but see, with the backpackers, most of them were from England or Europe. It was very popular, and it still is very, very popular to do this, to be a backpacker in Australia and to travel all through Australia. Obviously, it has a bad name now, thanks to Ivan Milat. But a lot of people from Europe and the UK still do it. He would ask questions. So he usually gave them a lift. So they'd probably be hitchhiking, and whilst they were hitchhiking, he would ask questions. Where are you from? Are you with anyone? And so he would sort of suss out whether there was someone that would be good, a good victim, really. Sometimes he didn't kill them. Sometimes he realized that wasn't the right thing to do, because too many questions would be asked, basically. Nikki says they thought that because both the knife and the gun was used in the killings, two modus operandi. Exactly. And that's not common for, usually there's one way that a serial killer likes to kill, but guns were used and knives were used as well. How did he die? He died in hospital of esophageal and stomach cancer. He'd been sick since May with cancer. He was diagnosed in May, and he actually outlived the prognosis. When I put the video up, when did I put the video up? 3 weeks ago. By then they were already saying he should have been dead. So he died at 4:07, was it? Let's have a little look. Yep, 4:07 a.m. this morning. It is now 8:46, so 4 hours ago he died. This came out really quickly. He died in the medical wing of Long Bay Jail this morning. So who knows, we may have a deathbed confession. I don't think so, but a lot of people are going to speculate. So let's have a look at some more articles and see if there's anything else that we could cover. Well, he was in Jay Suarez, he was in jail and he was in the medical ward of the jail. Beth, he did hunt and torture. He would so that he could torture them. One had I think 30 or so stab wounds. He had been undergoing chemotherapy though, because there's quite a few photos. Let's see if I can get you a photo. I have like a whole folder of photos of him. Only true crime people understand the videos I've had to do. So let's have a look at a recent-ish photo of him, and you can see, I mean, you can see the difference with his health. He looked a lot different. This is a good one, and this gives you a photo of his victims as well, so this is better. So that's a more recent photo of him coming up on the screen. Hey Riley. Yes, he was. And so this is not a sad day. And I know, hey Tracy, look, I'm not someone who is happy about people's deaths at all. I'm not like that. But I'm not sad about this at all. My first thought was poor onions. And I hope that he speaks out, and I hope that this helps the victims' families in their grief journey and in their healing from the horrific nature of his crime. So on the screen you can see his victims that he was... Hello? No audio? Can you guys hear me? Nikki says the movie Wolf Creek was partly based on him. Yes, and I only watched that a couple of weeks ago. If you can watch Wolf Creek, if you can watch Wolf Creek 1 and Wolf Creek 2, please do that. It's loosely based on his crimes. Is the audio okay, guys? You can hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, Harmony says, maybe suffering and pain meds made him remorseful enough to confess to something. I mean, damn, if he didn't say a word, he's one tough SOB. Yeah. Yeah. He did apparently confess to his mother. But she will probably... She did pass. So, that doesn't help at all. Tracy says, well, chemo and or cancer makes you look old fast. Yep. Well, he was in jail from when he went to jail. 1996. He was 52 when he went to jail. No, he never pled guilty. He would even sign letters, Ivan the Innocent, up until weeks ago. So we don't know. I highly doubt he said anything, really. He had so many antics behind it when he was in jail as well. At one point, he went on a hunger strike because he wanted a PlayStation. He went on a hunger strike for 9 days, I believe. He didn't get the PlayStation. Yes, Paul Onions got a reward and he donated the reward. Paul Onions is a hero. He's a hero we all deserve and we all need. And I really hope he says something about this. He makes a statement and I hope that this is a happy day for him. I feel weird saying that, but I really do. At one point, Ivan Milat had worked up a good standing in prison and was allowed a plastic knife in his case. That didn't happen and his finger wasn't reattached. It didn't work. In 2001, he swallowed razor blades, paper staples, and tiny metal chains. For what reason, we don't know. And then later in 2001, he also swallowed part of the flushing mechanism of the toilet. Hey Tori, yes, we have an Australian in here saying, "Oh, happy days." Beth is from Australia too, I do believe. She was saying, Tori Beth was saying that her family knew the Milats. The other interesting thing about this whole case is that in 2010, Ivan Milat's nephew, great nephew, Matthew Milat, actually killed someone in the same forest, the Langolo State Forest, as his great uncle. Like this guy's crazy. Crazy. Let's see what else we've got. See if we can find anything else in the news. Tracy, I love that. Tracy says, I hope that hurt coming out his butt. Probably did. How old is Paul Onions now? Ooh, let's have a look. How old was Paul Onions? He was 24 in 1993. So... he would be 50. I think he's about 50. So yeah, it would be, I would really love to hear from him. That would mean a lot. So there will be like a coronial inquest into this because all deaths in custody, even from natural causes, have to have that happen. Paul Onion sounds like Paul Bunyan. I know. Paul Onions, I love him. Let's find a photo of him. I'll find a photo of him so that I can show you. But if you haven't, I would really recommend watching the video I did, the Milat video I did. I'll pop the link. The link's in the top of my description. It just shows you the level of depravity. Yes, please give the video a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. I've had so many new subscribers in the last 24 hours. It's been so lovely. So here's a photo of take the background. There we go. So there's Paul Onions coming up on your screen in a minute. Beth says he would never ever confess he's a monster. I agree. I don't think he will. Apparently Biscuit the cat is stoked that he's dead. I'm sure that if I ask my animals, my fur children, they would feel the same. Yeah, it's really weird to speak like that. Really weird. It goes against human nature, I think, but He severed the spinal columns of his victims. I mean, what else do I need to say? He terrorized his victims so much. And of course it was him, you know, he says he was innocent, but he gave his girlfriend clothes that his victims were wearing, you know? So let's have a look and see if there's anything else that I might put up for a minute of him in May, how he looked in May. The photo that you can see on the left is how he looked in May, but this photo is kind of creepy. Of course it won't. Screenshot the saved photo. ATTNZ! Have you heard the wonderful news? It feels so weird saying that. But, I mean, this man, again, he severed the spinal column victim. Have a look at this photo. Oh, that went, I didn't want that. That was a bit. You look at that photo was chilling. Aussies will celebrate. You will see that today. Yes, it's really weird, but yeah, that's what will happen. It is a historic day. And I hope that it's a day of celebration for the victims' families, because did such horrific things and he never owned up to it at all. Who is Paul Onions? Paul Onions is the survivor of an attack by Ivan Milat. So what happened is he was picked up. He was going, I think he was going south to go fruit picking. He was a backpacker. He'd come over from the UK. And he got a ride from someone named Bill. Now, this was Ivan Milat. He used the name Bill. Bill is one of his brothers. So that's really interesting to me that he used that name. He got in the car with him, and then what Milat would do is he would stop the car. You'll also see this this sort of stuff in Wolf Creek as well. If you watch the movie 1 and 2, it is great. He stopped the car and say, I just got to get some cassettes, because, you know, it's the 90s. I just got to get some cassettes out the back because I want to listen to some music. He would get out of the car normally to get the gun. Now, Paul Onions had a feeling come over him that he wasn't safe. He actually got out of the car. And Milat reacted to that and like, well, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just stretching my legs. And Paul Onions thought, do I get back in the car or not? And he got back in the car. So it was then that Ivan gets back in the car, but then he stops again and says, oh, you know, I'm just going to get another cassette. And Ivan pulls a gun out, and without thinking, Paul Onion takes off and starts running. And Ivan Milat's standing there outside his car with a gun. Cars wouldn't stop for him. They would just go straight past. But a car did stop with a young woman and her sister and 4 children in the back. They actually stopped, and Paul got in, and they turned around and went back to a police station to give statements. And she has been interviewed since as well about the whole situation. He's one of the survivors of Milat. Which is amazing, because then when everyone found out there was a backpacker killer internationally, he actually called the police again and said, hey, you know, just a reminder about what happened to me. And so they flew him back and he picked Milat out of a lineup of photos. He said, "This is the man that did that. This is Bill." So his testimony and statements really helped. Now, also remembering that in the 70s, the 70s, let me just double check. Milat was on trial for the rape of two 18-year-old backpackers. Such a great way to put it. And I'm really glad that you said that. That's a great way to put it. So yes, let me go through my script from the Ivan Milat story so I can get the right date for you. But he was charged with the rape of two 18-year-old backpackers. There we go. I'll get the right date. The script was like 15 pages long. So let me read you what is in the script of that video. On Good Friday in April of 1971, Milat is 26 and is charged with kidnapping two 18-year-old backpackers and raping one of them. He stunningly fakes his own death before fleeing to New Zealand, where he lives for a year. When Milat returns to Australia due to his mother's heart attack, he is rearrested of the kidnap and rape charges. The trial finds him not guilty, as his lawyer John Marsden shockingly outed the two victims as lesbians, as he himself, a closeted homosexual, saw them at a gay bar together. The jury acquitted Milat due to their prejudicial views of lesbians at the time, and he walked on the charges. Marsden later revealed in interviews that he regretted the successful acquittal, as it paved the way for the murders that we soon learn of. So, whilst this is going on, Marsden, the lawyer, goes to a gay bar and sees the two victims out there and, thinks, they're lesbians. So he says in court, how can lesbians be raped or something ridiculous like that? And because we're talking about the 70s, people have such prejudice and he gets away with it. If he had been charged with that and was in jail, would the backpacker victims be alive? Would he? Would they? Harmony says, his suffering and death is totally justified in this circumstance. If it was easy lethal injection, would have been different feeling, I believe. Yeah, that's true. 13th, it's 9:05 a.m. I woke up at 7:30, which is early for me. I don't know, something told me to wake up, and then within half an hour of being awake, I find out that Ivan Milat is dead. So I don't know whether, my angels were like, hey, you need to get up because something big's about to happen. Because this is big, 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 big news in Australia. Oh, cool, Linda. I'll go and have a look. I did as well 3 weeks ago because I knew that this was coming. In fact, 3 weeks ago they did say that that he'd already survived more than they expected. Another incident I haven't mentioned, back in 1962, Ivan Milat was 17 at the time, and he gets into a taxi. The taxi driver is Neville Knight. He was a retired Army Morse code expert, and he was driving as a taxi driver at the time. Ivan gets into the car, and Milat shoots him from the back seat. Now, Ivan's never charged with this crime, and in fact, someone else was charged with the crime and sat in jail for 5 years. And he did confess, Ivan confessed to his brother Boris Milat, that he accidentally shot Knight, that his gun had misfired. So he got away with that as well. Beth says, I've driven through this area where the victims were found at night, really dark and creepy. I don't know if I could, to be honest with you. I can imagine. So all of his victims were found in the Belangolo State Forest. That was his hunting ground, I guess. He took them all there and killed them all there and disposed of their bodies there. One of the victims he decapitated, and they sadly never found her head, which is breaking news. Bridget Parker called upon the universe for Ivan's death by making a video. Yep, let's go with that. Why give prisoners chemo? I don't know, because it was stage 4. That's what confuses me. It was stage 4. It was terminal. They were giving him the chemo, gave him extra time because it was stage 4 in May, and we thought he only had weeks back then. Yes, Tracy, he got chemo. Been revealed that he was getting chemo, and they would take him from the prison to the hospital to get chemo. Which is interesting as well. So, let me read this part. So, in mid-May of this year, the aged and frail prisoner was taken to Prince of Wales Hospital for tests after a deterioration of his health. His transfer under heavy armed guard from the maximum security Supermax prison at Goulburn to the public hospital in the Sydney suburb of Randwick prompted outcry. It was the first time the public had seen images of the killer since his jailing 23 years ago. He was pictured white-haired and in a wheelchair. After spending several days at the Prince of Wales, Milat was taken to Long Bay Jail, where he was expected to live out his days. In the months starting from early August, he then made several trips between Long Bay and the Prince of Wales while he underwent chemotherapy. Previously in a wheelchair, by late September his condition had improved to the point where he was able to shuffle in and out of hospital, aided by police. So that's around the time I made the video. And so I was like, I was thinking maybe he's going to last a little longer than they thought. But yeah, so he only lasted a couple of weeks after that. That's a great point, Linda. Waste of good meds on a bad man. That chemo could have gone to someone else who needed it. Interesting, Tracy. You don't think that over there they do chemo for people if you're a lifer? That's interesting. That's really interesting. We should look into that, because that's kind of fascinating. See, the thing I don't understand, and this is not being me trying to be awful, but he was terminal. He's terminal. So you were just giving him extra time? Do they have that right? I guess they do. I guess they do. I don't know. I don't know what his victims would think about that. Oh, I wonder if I can save. No, but I'm going to put it up on the screen. It's just like a little GIF, but it shows you this image that I'm about, or this GIF that I'm about to show you, is what haunted me as a kid, and I'm not overreacting. When I think of Ivan Milat, this is what I think. This is what I'd see in my mind, because this is what I saw when I... Look at the smile that he gives. Interesting, Beth. That's really interesting to me. She says she never watches YouTube this early before her coffee, but she woke up. That's really interesting. Linda, I feel the same way. I really do. Harmony says, well, they shouldn't have that right considering he was spending the rest of his life in jail for horrible ass shit. I do agree. I mean, I guess with the prison system, the thing is that it's their job to confine people. But I guess you're playing with life and death if you don't. I don't know. So yeah, that image that you see is... that is how I remember Ivan Milat. That is the image that was on TV of him. And I was a kid. And I will always remember that. Apparently he was also showing early signs of dementia. And I do feel, especially for the victims, that they think, especially Robin Hickey, Amanda Robinson, and Leanne Goodall. I feel for those families because now they won't get answers now, which is really sad. Unless he confessed, hey Onique, yes, he just died 5 hours ago. So I wanted to come on and share the breaking news because it's kind of a great day in Australia. I hope that his family, because I do believe his family know the truth, I hope that they finally, now that he's dead, come out and speak. I really do hope that they speak. Just seeing if there's any more information. I think that might be it though. We're debating the fact that he was diagnosed with terminal esophageal and stomach cancer in May, and he was still given treatment. Even though it was terminal, he was still given chemo. So I don't know how to feel about that. Let's see if I don't think Paul Onions has said anything. What time is it over in England? Let me have a little look. It's 11:15, so Paul Onions should be awake. Did he have a last meal? We don't really... Well, I don't think that really would have happened because he had stomach cancer and esophageal cancer. He probably hasn't been able to eat. Maybe he could have had a feeding tube. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly right. He didn't he remained saying Ivan the Innocent in letters only weeks ago to people. So he didn't ever admit to his crimes. Ever. New South Wales Minister for Counter-Terrorism and Corrections, Anthony Roberts, said Milat had shown no remorse for his crimes and deserved no mercy on his deathbed, adding he can rot in hell. He was sentenced to die in jail and he was going to die in jail, Mr. Roberts said this morning. I wasn't going to have him take up a public hospital bed. Both the Commissioner and I were of that opinion. We had him removed from a hospital and sent back to Long Bay Jail. He can rot in hell. He showed no remorse. We ensure the sentence was carried out. So they actually actively took him out of the hospital. That's interesting. That's new info. Milat was diagnosed with esophagus and stomach cancer and given 3 months to live back in May. So he was meant to die around August, and he lasted an extra 2 months. Don't be sorry, Linda. I'm just trying to be I'm trying to be politically correct here because I'm live, but on the inside I'm so happy. To tell you the complete truth. I'm so happy for his victims. I'm so happy for his victims. And I'm really glad to hear that they actually actively made the choice to take him out of the hospital. Hey Carol, no, 3-second recap is great. So Ivan Milat, Australia's worst ever serial killer, has died. He died at 4:07 a.m. this morning. It is currently 9:18 a.m. in Australia, so he died 5 hours ago. He had terminal esophageal and stomach cancer. He was diagnosed back in May. He was expected to live 3 months, but he actually exceeded that by 2 months, really. He was convicted of 7 murders back in 94. He would take these backpackers into Belangolo State Forest and basically hunt them down. He decapitated one of his victims. He would he hunted two of his victims with guns and shot them. For target practice, apparently, he would sever the spinal columns of his victims so that they would be incapacitated, and he would then be able to talk to them. He was horrible, a horrible person. He was a truck driver, and it is believed that he has many more victims along the coast of Australia, through where I live, up further north. Because of the fact he was a truck driver. Let's have a look at the comments. Jay Suarez, that's great. That's a great point. It was a game to him. That's what he did. So you can see in the image on the screen, you can see Ivan Milat on the left. You can then see his 7 victims. And then on the right, you can see Mr. Paul Onions, who is the hero of this story. He survived an attack. He wasn't hurt physically, mentally, and emotionally, he was. But when he saw a gun come out from Milat, he bolted straight away, and he is part of the reason that Milat was convicted, because he was able to identify him. And he was charged with kidnap and rape back in the 70s of 2 18-year-old girls, Milat was. But he got away with it because his lawyer said, hey, they're lesbians. How can you rape lesbians? I don't know, something stupid like that. Hey, L. Taylor. Linda, we must have done that around the same time. The free chemo is what bothers me too. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I really do. I thought it was weird. And now talking to you guys, yeah, it really is weird that they did that. Did they have DNA? Do you know? I'm not sure. I think they did. They found all of the victims' belongings in Ivan Milat's house. He'd given like one of the tops that one of the victims was wearing. He gave it to his girlfriend. He had some of their camping equipment. He actually would, let me see if I can find photos. He would hide their stuff in his walls. I mean, he had Yeah. Crazy. Let's see if I can find a photo of the wall. And those that are just joining, he also, there were so many antics in prison. He would go on hunger strikes to get a PlayStation. He swallowed metal objects. He cut off one of his fingers and tried to mail it to the High Court for an appeal. Like, just, I don't know whether, doesn't seem like I can put them up. I have so many tabs open. There we go. There's back. We're back. Another website says yes, they would get chemo. So we were talking about the chemo situation, and would you give in America? Do what are they called? Prisoners. Do prisoners get chemo if they were jailed for life? And apparently they do. I guess it's a basic human right. Not that they are humans and that they should have that right, but I think that that's the reason. Nikki says we have universal healthcare in Australia, so they could not deny him care. That's true. I guess, and like 13th is saying, obviously he didn't decline. Obviously he wanted to live. So yeah. Beth, yep. Beth says Paul Hungins is my hero, beautiful soul. And Beth actually, her family, her mother knew the Milats and lived near them, which I just cannot imagine. Yes, Nikki says the guns and the bullets did match. Yes, that as well. Beth, Beth says, I'm surprised a fellow inmate didn't take him out. I'm sure that they tried. They actually put him in protective custody or solitary confinement because of that. Jay Suarez says, were they able to identify the victim who was decapitated but unable to locate her head? Yes, they were. I think she was... Let me just go back to my script notes and tell you exactly who that was. How about, do you want me go... I would recommend watching the video that I put up. It's at the top comment. It's the top of the description. It has all of the information about his victims, but let me just check which of the victims were decapitated. Because I think it was the German female. Yes, it is. So, Neuenbauer, first name. Gaber Neuenbauer, 21. Oh no, that's the guy. He was shot to the head 6 times. Habishfield. Anya Habishfield, 20, had been decapitated. So she was next to her boyfriend, Gaber, so I think that's how they identified her. But yeah. Why do we have still so many monsters still doing this? I don't know. I don't. But yeah, so he was in protective custody because, I mean, everyone hated him. He was, and it would have been bragging rights to kill him. Really. And so they all would have wanted to do it. So he was always in protective custody. Otherwise he would have died a long time ago. Remember when they used to have the electric chair? Did they have that in Australia? Yes. Actually, when did... I wanted to look into that, actually. I was actually going to do a story on the last person to be executed in Australia. Executions Australia. I don't know when that finished. Capital punishment. Wow, pretty. This is interesting. Government abolished the death penalty in 1973. With application also in the Australian Capital Territory and Northern Territory. Victoria did so in 1975. South Australia 1976. Western Australia 1984. And New South Wales abolished the death penalty for murder in 1955 and to all crimes in 1985. In 2010, the federal government passed legislation prohibiting the re-establishment of capital punishment by any state or territory. The Commonwealth will not extradite or deport a prisoner to another jurisdiction if they might face the death penalty. That's interesting. The last execution in Australia took place in 1967 when Ronald Ryan was hanged in Victoria. Between Ryan's execution in 1967 and 1984, several more people were sentenced to death but had their sentences commuted to life imprisonment. The last death sentence was given in August 1984 when Brenda Hodge was sentenced to death in Western Australia. Now, let me look at Ronald Ryan because... Oh no, see... So, he's kind of scary looking. Go look up Ronald Ryan. I wrote him down to actually cover... Well, eventually. Yeah, he was the last person. So that was ages ago we abolished the death penalty. We usually just did hangings, which... I believe in the right to live, but some cannot be helped in any capacity. I agree. Harmony says, death by firing squad. The squad members' guns are loaded with blanks and bullets, so nobody knows who's actually shooting the person for their well-being. Yes, which I think is a whole bunch better than you knowing that you're the one that kills someone. There was a hanging in Florida in 1976, a public hanging. Oh. I don't know. What about you guys? Would you, if you were given, this is weird, but if you were given the option to witness an execution of someone who has admitted that they did it, did something really super horrific, to someone that you know, would you actually go and witness it? I don't know if I could. I was actually watching an old Oprah episode yesterday whilst I was cleaning the bunny's room, and before disaster happened in my house, and I'll explain in a second, but I was learning about restorative justice, and I love the idea of restorative justice. Tracy says, hell yes. Linda says, no, I could not. No matter what. Nikki says, no thanks. Carol says, I'd go. Yeah, I don't know. I guess if it was family member, maybe. I don't know. Personally, I don't actually agree with the death penalty, and it's not because of the reason you think. It's because for the victim's family, the death penalty isn't what you think it is. I've learnt. It's easier to give someone life than it is death, because there are so many appeals that it takes place after the death sentence or the death penalty is given, that you drag that victim's family through it for decades. They're still going to have to go to all of those appeals and to try and fight to keep that death penalty for their loved ones. Whereas if you get a life sentence without the possibility of parole, give them 400 years, there's less of an appeal process. So for me, I wouldn't want to subject a family to all of those appeals because they last for decades. I agree with it for scumbags like this guy. Yeah. Are lethal injections open to public here? I know they have a viewing room. I think they have the viewing room is for family of the victims, family of the person being executed, and media. Nikki says still no. Lifers have to be taken care of and the cost is outrageous. Yeah, I bet it is. Especially for a country like America because you have such a large population, whereas we don't have that in Australia. Our population's quite small compared to... Carol says I mightn't look until it's over. Yeah, it would be very confronting. Very, very confronting. Interesting. Hang on. This is interesting. This is new news. A corrective service spokesman told news.com.au the serial killer was found dead in his cell just after 4 a.m. He was in a cell? He had been in and out of hospital this year and was moved to a secure annex at the Prince of Wales Hospital in Randwick on October 11th. He reportedly took a turn for the worse on October 14th and was moved to the ICU, where he was under heavy guard. That's interesting. He was in a cell? I thought in a hospital. A hospital in like a medical ward. No, don't have another article. You have to pay for a subscription. I think it's still breaking because there's not a lot of articles just yet. That's very interesting. Beth says, I agree with you, fighting the system for years. I prefer 23 hours locked up for evil. I think it's easier for the victim's family, honestly. Oni says, maybe put them in a cage with crocodile and let fate write itself out. I don't love that. Bring back hard labor for vicious killers, etc. How can you say taking life is wrong and then take... How can you say taking life is wrong and then take a life? What do you mean? Leave him in general population, then it is fate. Yeah, see, if he was in general pop, he would have died decades ago. But he was protected. Oni says, I try to personalize my feelings by what if it was my mum or husband that fell victim to Ivan Milat, and I think I'd want him to suffer. And he did. He did. A lot of that suffering was brought on by himself. I mean, he swallowed razor blades, he went on a hunger strike, he cut off a finger, he swallowed part of the flushing mechanism of a toilet. Just, yeah. A messed up person. And I hope that the most important thing is I hope that his victims can breathe. Riley says, true, Linda, it gets crazy, but I try and think of my friend's mum who was murdered and how they felt. I think I'd go and rethink it, then rethink it. I don't know. So sorry to hear about your friend's mum. I fight hard for the wrongfully convicted, so I cannot agree with the death penalty unless 1,000% admitted and guilty. Carol says, I couldn't live thinking of the torture my child suffered, not while he was getting pampered in jail and my child gone forever. Exactly. Although I don't think anyone is pampered, especially in American jails. They sound pretty brutal to me. Pretty brutal. But I think I've actually gone through every single news article that's been released since this has happened. It's only happened 5 hours ago. It is Sunday here, so I'm sure they're all scrambling a lot to get info up. I hope that we hear from Paul Onions soon. Article. One more article to go and then I think we're done. Father of 21-year-old British backpacker Carolyn Clark, who along with her friend Joanne Walters was among those killed, said the family thinks of his daughter every day. We still think of Carolyn every day, but it doesn't mean we have to think of Milat every day. Of the killer's demise, he added, it's a horrible way for anyone to end their life, but then it was even more horrible the way our daughter and so many others lost theirs, so sympathy isn't high on my list, I'm afraid. Mr. Clark said a belated confession and the disclosure of where other bodies were disposed of could bring some kind of closure to the families who he said he feels desperately sorry for. There's a lot of families that didn't get any answers. If he was to finally face up to the fact and admit to any others that he has done, if indeed he has, then I think that would be a wonderful thing for those parents, because for the short time that we didn't know, I know how they must be feeling. Interesting. But I don't think they're going to get that, sadly. And so I think it might be a sad day for those families who didn't get the answers from Milat on where their family is, their family member is. There are 3 women that they think Milat did kill. And today means that they'll never get answers probably. So that might be a bit of a sad realization for them. Okay. So Oni says it's hard to idly choose death upon someone, but for the victims and their families and their pain is not something I think God would want them to endure, or the pain the victims endured. I agree. Ruther Sluther says it's so wrong. Jail, get free medical care, and we work a 40-hour to 60-hour job and we have no medical insurance. Yeah, I get it. Bye, Beth. Have a good day. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, I ride the fence as well. But I just don't think, I don't think it's, if a family wants the death penalty, they want the death penalty, and I've never been in that situation, so I'm not gonna say anything about that. But I've learnt that the appeals process with the death penalty. There are so many appeals that do take decades, and that's why these people sit on death row for decades, because they're allowed a certain amount of appeals, and there's a huge process, and they can drag it out for decades, 20, 30, 40 years. So I kind of feel like, wouldn't it just be easier for them for the victims' families, instead of having to be dragged that much, those many decades, let the person rot in jail for the rest of their life, and know that they will never get out. That's kind of my thinking now, about it. And I think it's really interesting as well, guys, that he swallowed razor blades, staples, metal objects, and he ended up with esophageal and stomach cancer. Isn't that interesting? I wonder where there's something. Probably is. But it's 9:44 here, so I'm gonna actually get out of bed and go and have some breakfast. Probably weird to everyone that's listening in America. 13th juror, I don't know whether he was trying to commit suicide or trying to get attention for something. I really don't. He was crazy. Swallowed razor blades, metal objects, the flushing mechanism of a toilet. I don't know whether it was like a mental health issue or whether he was trying to commit suicide or trying to look for attention, because I mean, he did do a hunger strike for 9 days because he wanted a PlayStation, cut off his finger and tried to mail it to the high courts for a what do you call it, an appeal. I don't know. Busy guy. So, Carol says, why didn't the coward just slit his wrists if he had a razor? Just wanted hospital stays. I think that's right. I think you're right. What's my ideal breakfast? I'm obsessed with breakfast wraps. I think that they are heaven. So that would probably be my ideal breakfast. For me, breakfast is, when I think of a great breakfast, I think eggs and bacon. I don't do sugary things, like I'm not great with pancakes or waffles or anything like that for breakfast. I could do that for like lunch or brunch. Yeah, I've got no idea how he got razors at all. That's interesting. I heard the perpetrators constantly are tormented by what they've done. At first it's a thrill, then they get older, they are tormented with nightmares forever. I hope that he was. Thank you so much, guys, for coming in. Yeah, thank you for chit-chatting with me about the breaking news, and I'll pop up a video if anything else comes out. I'm just checking to see if I missed any comments. So definitely, yes, please give me a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you guys soon. I probably won't be doing a true crime spotlight tomorrow. I'm actually going to focus on all things spooky this week for Halloween. So true crime spotlight will be back the week after, but I've got some really good fun things planned for this week. So I will see you all with a new video tomorrow. Have a lovely day or night wherever you are, and take care. Bye for now, guys.